the first to know.
We all just looked at the evidence and pretty much agreed. Wouldn't you say so? Number 3?
We came in with our personal beliefs, but we did look at the evidence. We all came in with our personal beliefs, and some of those did differ, but we spent a lot of time really seriously studying the evidence and looking at the testimony and the jury instructions, and obviously came to an agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you pay attention at all or see all the sort of media circus out here? And if so, how
that answer, the first surprise of what may be a number, most of the analysts and observers had expected, because 32 hours, almost 32 hours of deliberation were required to reach today's verdicts, that there was considerable differences of view on the evidence and judgment about Michael Jackson's innocence or guilt, and that was quickly dispelled with the first answers.
Trying to stay as private and quiet as possible.
anyone else want to add on the media? Have thought on the media? You all jumped at it, Sue.
I felt it the first time that I really felt the presence and stuff, I think, was our second day out of jury deliberations, when we all walked out to the van together, and seeing all those people on the right of us and on the left of us, it kind of hit you like, oh my God, where'd they all come from? And that, but you know, we could hear, you know, the media going back and forth and everything when we were outside and stuff, but otherwise it didn't really bother us that much at all.
Anyone else? Sir.
I think by the time we got to deliberation, we had all been so conditioned to the media that it didn't make any difference anymore. That was my personal feeling.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
What number, sir? Just one more time, your number?
Number 1.
Number 1, thank you. Turning across the aisle.
CNN, juror number 1. I know you said in your statement that you meticulously all went through the evidence and that sort of thing, but what stands out in your mind as the most important thing that swayed you, that made you feel it was that you had to vote not guilty in this case?
I can't really point to any one specific item right now. I mean, there were tons of evidence to consider, and to pick one item out is really difficult. And I would just say that we considered all of the evidence, and of course, since it's a criminal trial, it had to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And in looking at all of the evidence and not just one specific item, I mean, that's the conclusion we arrived at. And I think we really worked hard and were very careful in making that decision.
Any testimony, though, that just stood out in your mind, that kind of, in your own head, you thought, well, this isn't right. I just can't.
As I sit here right now, I can't point to anything specific.
Okay, across the aisle.
Hi, Quentin Kushner from the Santa Maria Times. Just curious, what was your opinion of the attorneys' performances, both from the prosecution and the defense, as they tried this case? For anybody?
I think they're all wonderful litigators, very well prepared on both sides.
I think it was a sight to see, because I've never seen anything like this, and you've seen it on TV all the time, and now you actually see it up close and personal, and it's like, wow, you know. For my first time doing jury duty, it's pretty interesting, to say the least.
And we got to see their faces like you guys didn't. So when stuff was going on, we could see, you know, their sighs or their yes and stuff like that, and we could see what they were thinking in their selves there.
Anyone else have a feeling? Okay, let's move on to across the aisle.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Salvador Duran. I'm with Telemundo, Channel 52, Los Angeles. I would like to find out if the fact that Michael Jackson is an international superstar, what role did that play in your decision-making? And I would also like to ask Mr. Foreman, if any of you speak Spanish, to also, after you answer my question, to briefly make a statement in Spanish for the large Spanish audience across the United States.
Well, Personally, I think we looked at all the evidence. We looked at Michael Jackson, and one of the first things we decided that we had to look at him as just like any other individual, not just as a celebrity. And once we got that established, that we could go beyond that, we were able to deal with it just as fairly as we could with anybody else.
Do you speak Spanish, sir?
I'd rather have her answer.
Oh, I couldn't.
Brief, if you could just tell us just what your thoughts on the fact that Michael Jackson is a megastar known around the world. En español, por favor. ¿Qué piensa, señora?
No creo que podría comunicar bien.
Lo hace muy bien.
No creo que podría hacerlo al momento.
Okay. Pero ¿qué piensa en general del resultado final?
El resultado en general, creo que tuvimos mucha consideración en los testimonios de las personas que vinieron aquí y tomamos en consideración la evidencia y basado a eso hicimos nuestra conclusión.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. And going across the way to the New York Post.
I wanted to direct this question mainly to the parents on the jury, somebody with children. And some of the more troubling evidence to many observers was about Mr. Jackson sleeping in bed with children. And I was wondering if you found that troubling or believable, and B, if you would approve if your own children would do such a thing.
And were you asking that of...
Any parents on the jury? I see you nodding, ma'am. I could like to ask you.
Well, as a parent, it's something that you are constantly, every moment of your day, you're protective over what happens to your children. And I guess I might be speaking maybe for myself and a few others, jurors, that, what mother in her right mind would allow that to happen, or just freely volunteer your child, to sleep with someone, and not just so much Michael Jackson, but any person for that matter. So that's something, that mothers, I think, are naturally concerned with.
So did you feel that the mother in the case was at fault rather than Mr. Jackson?
I'd like to comment on that, but I believe at this time I probably shouldn't.
Okay, that would be the end for that. Let's move it along.
Hi, thanks for all of you to come. My name is Steve Lentz from KFWB Radio. If I could just ask, when the mother, Janet Arvizo, looked at you and said, "It's burned right here in my brain," I can tell you the media kind of laughed. Could I just ask your reaction when you heard, the comment from the mother, when she looked at you directly and talked to you?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I am.
Well, what number are you? I'm number 10. She said a lot of things that were maybe a little, they came on very strong, and when she said it was something, burned right there, I kind of felt that, she, there was a lot of things probably burned right there. So, I don't know how to answer that, really.
Could we go to the lady behind you there, please? Yeah.
I'm number 5. I disliked it intensely when she snapped her fingers at us. That's when I thought, don't snap your fingers at me, lady.
Thank you. Well, number 4, I know.
I was very uncomfortable with that. A lot of the witnesses looked over at us from time to time, but then they'd look back, but she didn't take her eyes off of us, so that was a very uncomfortable feeling.
Number 4, thank you. I know that we're sort of cruising along and are timid. You guys are feeling okay? Just want to touch base with you? Okay, good. I'm going to stay with print for a moment. We're trying to alternate print, TV. So print would go next, then TV after that.
Hi, my name is Nick Madigan. I'm with the New York Times. I just wondered whether there was anybody in all the long line of witnesses, there were, I think, 140-odd witnesses, who you found credible. And if so, why? Because obviously you found you found him innocent on all counts. So I just wonder whether there was anything that actually rang true, and if so, who and why? And I believe you were interested in talking about that.
I can comment. Very comfortable at saying the telephone people were very credible. That's all.
Well, is there anyone else who found anyone credible? There were a lot of witnesses. Wait, Jane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on a second. Yeah. The lady in pink.
I found Kiki, her testimony to be credible. Fournier, housekeeper. Also, Jesus. Jesus Salas. His testimony.
I think I saw some folk maybe on my right in the back. Did anyone add to that? I just want to be sure we respect your thoughts. Any
No,
adds?
just adding the last name, Jesus Salas, is another credible witness that we
So
thought.
no one in the family, no
Aja Pryor.
no boys, no previous victims, that's what we're calling them, but anybody at all?
Alleged.
Guess not. All right, thank you.
And we move across to TV.
Jane Velez Mitchell from Celebrity Justice, and thank you for coming out and speaking. We appreciate it, and having seen you this whole time. A question, and I think I would start with the juror number 5, the lady back there. A lot of people said the timeline was one of the biggest problems with this case, that the conspiracy had some problems, that the allegations of molestation began 19 days after the cover-up began. What are your thoughts on the timeline, how the prosecution presented that, and some of the things that happened in the interim of that timeline?
I really don't want to comment on that right now. We discussed that, and maybe number 3 would like to take that one.
Go for it, number 3.
We spent a lot of time, and personally that was very confusing in the beginning, but I wrote to the point where I can hardly use my thumb. I'm very proud of everyone here. We took notes so well that we could develop the timeline on the boards and really analyze it. So it was a question. The timeline was a concern.
Concern or problem?
I think let's move across. We keep moving.
Dan Whitcomb from Reuters News Service. For the foreman and anyone else who wants to answer, we heard a tremendous amount of testimony about the pornography found in Mr. Jackson's room, all the explicit material, alcohol, sleeping with boys, supposedly. Jesus Salas, who several of you said was a good witness, testified to him being drunk 4 days out of the week. I'm wondering if any of you were disturbed by any of that, if that gave you pause, if that factored into the deliberations, and how you feel about that at this point.
Well, we went through a lot of fingerprints, latent prints, ridges, you name it. I think we heard it all, things we'd never even thought about. But again, the fingerprints, I think, had a lot not to do with the case, because those are adult magazines. Anyone can own them. I think that's all I need to want to say about that right now, but anybody else?
Did you find that testimony credible, or did you kind of reject it and say, this hasn't been proven to me? Or did you decide, maybe it's proven, but it doesn't prove the charge?
That would be it right there. It doesn't prove the charge.
Anyone else? All right, let me go to television then.
Hi, Kimmy Culp with ABC News and Good Morning America. Juror number 5 and juror number 10, specifically, you guys certainly have spent a lot of time together over the past few months and experienced a very unique situation. Talk to me about the dynamic and, whether you formed some lasting friendships on this jury.
Oh, we certainly, shall I go first? we certainly have formed lasting friendships, and really close. It's really a close-knit thing. You just can't imagine how lost we felt when the alternates left us. It's like part of us left, and we just felt. But I think we're all going to keep this up as
That's why
friends.
we want them here for support.
Yes,
Because we just
yes.
needed them with us, and we did.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think coming from all different walks of life and all different types of employment, we're really a good support system for each other. We all had different views, of course, but sometimes we found that we had a lot of things in common and that we did think alike, but of course, when it came to the fine details of things, fortunately, we did get to know each other in being tight quarters, that we were able to have discussions and not screaming matches. And we had a lot of good food.
One thing out of this whole thing that I was telling him today, is that I made 19 new friends, over 6 months. And, I mean, I'm happy about that. I appreciate them all, What? That I made 19 new friends out of this. And I'm glad I got that out of this.
I see one, hold on, let's come over to you, over here to the camera, and go ahead, please.
And the beauty of that was that we all set the intent to begin with, that we would get along no matter what we decided or what we saw, that we would discuss it and we would keep it cool. And we did.
Let me go to a .com.
Hi, Roger Friedman from FoxNews.com. Thank you for being here. We could probably keep you here for hours asking you questions, especially the reporters who've been in the courtroom the whole 3 months. We've been staring at you guys.
Yeah, but I promise we wouldn't.
I wanted to ask you, maybe alternate number 5, because I feel like I was looking at you a lot during the case. 2 questions. One is, did the 1108 stuff mean a lot to you? The Macaulay Culkin, Brett Barnes, Wade Robeson, Jason Francia. Did that really play an impact with you? Because that has not been used much in cases, and it was developed especially for Michael Jackson from 10 years ago. And the other question is, for all of you, you were told by Mesro that the Arvizos were con artists, liars, and thieves. Is that something you thought earlier in the game? Is that something that was going through your head while you were watching them as they came and went, and you heard testimony about them?
I just want to say that, as alternates, we took it as serious as being jurors. We, at all times, even in the time waiting when we weren't there, we felt we were there. And everything that we saw was extremely important. Macaulay Culkin was as extremely important as every other piece of evidence that was shown. I can't say that any one piece was more extreme than another. It all was important. The whole situation was extremely sad, and there's not a person in this area that takes lightly what went on the last 4 months.
I was asking about the 1108 because it was supposed to be about a preponderance of evidence.
Step forward a little bit. The camera can't see you. Just step forward just a little bit. There you go.
Because the 1108 was supposed to show that it was a preponderance of evidence that would lead up to a conclusion.
I'm still going to tell you that not any one piece stood out than any. We considered everything, and I know that every person here, sitting here, can tell you the exact same thing. They considered every piece as extremely important. We think it was an important piece, but it was only a piece, and the judge instructed us on that in the very beginning.
Anyone else want to add to that? I know I'm getting a little bit of a time cube. I've got to take 1 or 2 more as we wrap up, or as long as you can hang on. Anyone else want to add? Let's go to print. And we have short, quick questions now before we lose the jury.
I'm Tina Sussman from Newsday newspaper in New York. I had a question. I believe it's for juror number 8. Yeah, you were crying very openly while the verdicts were being read. You looked extremely emotional. I'm just wondering if you could explain what was going through your mind. What made you sob so openly? You looked heartbroken, actually.
Well, it's very emotional. And I wasn't the only one crying, okay? Even though it might be because I'm sitting up front, all right? I had to pass it around. But after deliberating for as long as we did, and emotions everybody goes through, and just everything, it just realize that it's done and it's over, and that we all can now go on with our lives as much as possible normally that will be. But yeah, it was very emotional. There's like a no-win situation, for the Arvizo family or for Michael Jackson. Everything that both families had gone through. But we had to do what we were instructed to do, and that's what we did.
Anyone else want to add to that? All right, let's go one last TV question.
Hi, I'm Sarah Claggett. I work at the Today Show and with Dateline NBC. We all left here on Friday at 2:30, wondering how long we were going to be here. What changed the 4 hours this morning in your deliberations to come up with a verdict? Number 1.
I actually didn't believe we'd be finished today.
Yeah, I don't think
I don't think anybody did. I think having the weekend to do some thinking about it helps. You come in with a clearer mind maybe, of where you're going and what you have to do. But to think that we would have been finished today, that hadn't entered my mind this morning. There was still a lot of ground to cover, but I think once we understood all the evidence and we talked it out, that it was clear what we had to do.
Do the rest of you think you'd be here longer?
I did.
Yeah. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting to be out today, so, I mean, I thought it would be perhaps, sometime this week, but I didn't think it would be today.
I'm getting some signals that, no, we're doing questions individually. We're not going to do screaming. I promised them that. I'm going to hold to that promise. I'm getting signals that you're okay for a little bit more. A little bit. Can we ask your indulgence? Can I get you water or anything at all? You're all good? All right, let's stay over here for a moment, then we'll go over there.
Thanks for doing this. We saw you all taking meticulous notes, and you did an amazing job. Art Harris with Entertainment Tonight in The Insider. Tom Mesereau said this was about reasonable doubt, and I just wondered if you could explain to us what reasonable doubt you all found.
Who are you asking about?
Any of them?
Who would like that?
Oh, just a short comment. We had 98 pages of instructions, and we referred to them quite diligently, and we kept going back to it. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt.
Was that anyone else? Anyone else for that?
We actually challenged one another in the deliberation room. I mean, it wasn't, I don't want to give the impression that this was a really slam dunk deal where you just go in to a room and 12 people agree. I don't think 12 people can agree on anything except that the sun might come up tomorrow morning. And beyond that, you got to talk about it. And we did talk about it. We challenged the issues, and we came to the decision that pointed to reasonable doubt.
Open, articulate, but ultimately unconvinced. The 12 jurors and 8 alternates who have acquitted pop star Michael Jackson of the 10 counts of child molestation against him. They reached their verdict just a short time ago, and we're talking to reporters about how they reached it. One of the extraordinary things they said, in a parade of witnesses that lasted more than 140 people long, they could name only a handful they found actually believable. One of the insights that they've offered in their 7 days of deliberation, 14 weeks of actually hearing the case. Ted Rowland has been at the courthouse for much of all of this. Ted, you've been watching these people, I suppose, wondering about them. What most stands out now that we've heard from them?
Well, they're very guarded. They will not talk about the witnesses individually, specifically the accuser, the accuser's family, but they keep referring to the fact that they did their job, and this is the verdict, this is the conclusion that they came up with, and it was quite a dramatic end to this 3+ month trial today when the verdicts were read.
Let me ask you about whether you were struck by their feelings about the mother of the accuser. We heard, I think, at least one and more than one jury member actually saying that they really took a dislike to her.
Well, being in the courtroom day after day, the accuser's mother was, I think, by all accounts, an Achilles heel for this prosecution because of the inconsistencies in her testimony and because of what was demonstrated on the defense side, her role in the J.C. Penney lawsuit. Basically, she had sued J.C. Penney Company in the United States, and the inconsistencies in that lawsuit were dramatic, and they were flushed out on the stand and then flushed out in the defense case. I think that's what jurors didn't like. I think that ultimately that may have been a major hurdle for this prosecution team.
Now, they did not hear from Jackson himself. Let me just ask you what you've seen of him in the time since the trial ended.
Well, when the verdict was read, he was inside the courtroom, obviously, and he dabbed his eyes with a Kleenex at some point during the reading of the verdict, and then he hugged his legal team, spent a short amount of time inside the courtroom, and then he emerged, as he does at the end of every day. He didn't raise his hands up in jubilation by any standpoint. He waved to the crowd. He acknowledged the crowd, but you didn't get the sense of celebration from Michael Jackson, his legal team, or his family members. More a sense of relief, more a sense that they believe that justice was done, and a sense that he wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. They brought the Suburbans up, and that's exactly what he did, headed back to Neverland Ranch.
Now, in the questioning to the jury, there was a question that probably few people outside of Santa Maria really understand. A reporter from the New York Times wanted to know the effect of the 1108 stuff, essentially legal provisions that were enacted in part because of Michael Jackson's previous experience with the law. Can you walk us through that?
The 1108 code, evidence code in the state of California was changed recently to allow jurors to hear allegations, just allegations of prior bad acts is what they're called. Basically, the prosecution under this law can bring up stories of allegations of similar bad acts and try to flush that out. They have to prove that there are similarities between the allegations at hand and these prior bad acts. And that's what the prosecution did. They brought up evidence that Michael Jackson had conducted himself in a manner as he was accused of previously, specifically back in 1993 and 94. It was a key part of the case, and a part of the case that many analysts thought would help the prosecution get a win here. Jurors, at the end of the day, say they weighed the evidence and they came back not guilty, even though they heard this 1108 or prior alleged acts against Jackson.
Ted Rowlands at the courthouse in Santa Maria, thanks very much. Joining us now is a frequent legal analyst on our air, a former U.S. attorney, and in that capacity, a prosecutor of cases probably not like this one, but Kendall Coffey, we're glad to have you with us. What stands out in your mind now that we've heard the verdicts and, in fact, have heard from the jury?
Well, I think what we've seen here is a jury that really did its job, because for all the mud the prosecution was throwing, for some of the compelling evidence that they really had, John, about past allegations, past alleged victims, the jury focused on what the judge told them to. What is the evidence in this particular case, and is there a reasonable doubt? At the same time, the defense had a very, very clear theory. This was about a scheming, scamming mob who put her kids up to a pack of lies in order to hit the jackpot for millions of dollars. Enough to create a doubt, and I think that this is, frankly, a tribute to a jury that did its job.
Was the prosecution unlucky or unwise in bringing this case? They scored 0 for 10. It looks pretty bad.
Well, when you lose, you get second guessed like crazy. But John, I think a lot of it is deserved. Think of how many witnesses they put on that backfired, including, by the way, Jackson's ex-wife, who did a very compelling job of presenting him as not a weirdo, but a good person and a loving father. At the same time, they had a kidnapping conspiracy theory that didn't make a bit of sense. Among other things, they had this family supposedly being held hostage at Neverland, even though they left several times during the course of their kidnapping. And by the way, while she was a kidnapping victim, the alleged mom went out to have a full body wax. That kind of convoluted, implausible thing can bring down the credibility of the rest of the case. And that may be one of the things that got doubt started to be planted in the minds of the jury.
There are people outside of the legal community who've watched the prosecutor, the district attorney Thomas Sneddon, pursue Michael Jackson and the allegations against him for more than a decade. And it seemed to some people like it had gone beyond a professional obligation, it had become personal. Looking at the outcome of this case, 11 years after Tom Sneddon first started investigating Michael Jackson, do you think there's anything to that possibility?
Well, when you lose, the answer is maybe. But I've got to tell you, in fairness to him, if he believed with his heart and soul that Michael Jackson was a child molester, then doggone it, he shouldn't give up on it. And if he thinks, as he says he did in his press conference after the trial, that there were credible allegations here, he had a duty to pursue it. Now, looking back, when you consider the fact not only the huge amount of baggage involving the accuser's family, the mom maybe dreaming up, fabricating evidence in order to sting JCPenney in a settlement, the fact that she pretty much clearly committed welfare fraud, and by the way, the fact that the alleged accuser himself had totally contradicted his allegations that Michael Jackson had molested him on 3 different occasions. Looking back, you wonder if maybe this was a case that never should have been brought in the first place.
What really pushed the case, I suppose you could say, are 2 pieces of video. And it struck me as unusual that videotapes would have such an important role in a case like this, or a case of any kind. The first one, of course, was the Michael Bashir documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, during which Jackson was seen hand in hand with his accuser, saying that he often invited children into his bed. And the other piece of video that was played at the end of the trial was the youngster at the time, the 13-year-old boy, explaining to police what had happened. You ever prosecute cases that were so relying on videotape?
Well, when you get video, it's more than a picture worth 1,000 words. It is a kind of evidence that can be worth those words guilty every time. But clearly, the videotape of the young man being basically questioned by the police in 2003 was what the prosecution thought was the most credible thing they had. The jury came back to that accuser himself in the closing moments of their deliberation when they had various playbacks of the accuser's testimony, and it all came down to what it should have. Not Jay Leno, not Chris Tucker, not the alleged victim's mom, but do you believe the accuser himself? And the jury obviously said, no, we don't. At least there's a reasonable doubt as to whether we should believe this young man.
There were a lot of descriptions that resorted to the tired old metaphor of calling this a circus as trials go. Certainly outside the courtroom it was a circus. Do you think people who are going to look back at the record of what actually happened in court in front of the jury are going to find reason to fault the judge or the legal process, or did it work the way it's supposed to?
Well, I think it worked the way it's supposed to, but you make a good point. When there's this much media, this much attention, by the way, this colorful defendant and a cast of characters and accusing witnesses that are almost as colorful as Michael Jackson, you can certainly obscure the truth-seeking process that took place inside the courtroom with everything that took place outside the courtroom. But this judge did a very good job. His rulings on evidence were first-rate. He had to allow in the evidence of past accusations under California's law. On the same time, he kept a lot of things out that didn't belong in that trial, and the jury did its job. They got past, is Michael Jackson a strange guy, or what did he do 10 or 15 years ago? They focused on the real questions is, did he do what he is alleged to have done here today, and is there a reasonable doubt about whether he committed those crimes?
Former U.S. Attorney Kendall Coffey, always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you for this.
Hey, thanks, John.
10 counts against Michael Jackson, not guilty on all 10. We take a break. Our coverage of the verdict continues.
My past history of Mr. Jackson had absolutely, unequivocally, nothing to do with our evaluation of this particular case. That's been a nice little 30-second soundbite that the media has used to try to justify this thing, but it had never had anything to do with either the sheriff's investigation or our decision to file.